Welcome to the Spotlight Series. I'm your host, Scott Nerney. We're live at the Queeset Inn. Stop down and see us. Order the breakfast burger. Had it tonight with onion rings. It was phenomenal. Trust me on that. Tonight we have the honor of a guest, Becc Nelson. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and life coach, and we're going to talk a little bit about your next journey as an author as well. Welcome to the Spotlight Series.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Tell us a little background on yourself.
So I have been a marriage and family therapist. Went to graduate school and a little bit later after I had my daughter. So I was 30 by the time I got my degree, and then it takes a couple of years. So by the time I was licensed, I was 30. But I've been in the business of human services since getting out of grad school, so since the early 90s. Started out at Kodak locally and worked in a methadone clinic. That was my first job fresh out of high school, so that was interesting. You get your teeth cut you learn very quickly. It's a steep learning curve. But so I've been in the business of mental health and substance abuse since the early 90s. Got my license in 2000, and I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist ever since then. So working in primarily mental health. I love working specifically with couples, but also work with individuals. So my husband and Ed and I decided we were going to open up our own practice in January of 2011. So we're going on 12 years now in Lincoln. So the last time that I was practicing prior to that, I was working for a friend on Jefferson Boulevard in Warwick. And, she had a great practice. And the two of us said, we want to do this ourselves too. And we had a non-compete clause, so I had to go a certain distance from where she was, and we made a fresh start. We were living in Coventry at the time, and since then we kind of moved everything further north in the state, which I had never been. I grew up in North Kingston, so it was someplace you didn't go. That was more than a 20-minute drive. Sure. So we're at the northern end of the state now.
So talk to a little bit about marriage and therapy and counseling. Is it keeping people together, helping them amicably break apart, a little of both?
Whatever the needs of the couple are, really. Okay. The other piece that we added pretty quickly to the practice, we're called Hope Counseling and Mediation Center, because we also do divorce mediation. And a lot of people would say to us, isn't that kind of counterproductive? If you're counseling clients, why do you also provide divorce mediation? And the answer to that is because people are going to get divorced anyway, and divorce mediation allowed us to be able to have a way to help couples divorce in a way that they could keep it amicable, and it didn't take as long. It wasn't lawyer to lawyer. It was two people sitting down and saying, these are the decisions we're going to make on behalf of our family. So we do divorce mediation as well. So sometimes we help couples separate amicably and continue to co-parent, and sometimes we help them stay together. So a little bit, sometimes we help them figure out where they are in that process.
Sure. And I'm sure you get a lot of testimonials and feedback as well from couples that have helped in every direction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like sometimes couples don't know what they want when they come to counseling. We do a mix of individual and couples therapy, but we seem to we do have a lot of people that come to us specifically for couples counseling. I think we have a reputation for that. There's far fewer licensed marriage and family therapists in the state than there are licensed social workers and licensed mental health counselors. So I think a lot of people specifically look for licensed marriage and family therapists to come for couples therapy.
Okay. And how do people reach you as they're watching this and they want to jot a quick note to give a website as well?
So we have two websites. I have a website for myself, BeccNelson.com, so BECC Nelson.com. And there's also a website for Hope Counseling in general. And there's a total of 6 therapists, including me. With the pandemic, we've been extremely full. And so that side of the house we take health insurance. It's just very difficult to get people in. There's been a big need for mental health counseling, specifically for couples counseling since the pandemic. So that website is hopecounselingri.com. And they can see the bios on our therapists, and there's a way to contact us there, both through a click for an email or through our phone number.
Okay. And you've also started to do spiritual work as well?
So I specifically have been adding spiritual coaching, which is sort of a little bit different than mental health counseling. I don't take health insurance for that because it sort of taps into your intuitive nature and relies a lot on the 18 universal laws and the laws of energy to assist people in growth. So it's mental health counseling sort of with a twist.
Okay. And it's been well received?
It has. It asks. We don't take health insurance for that piece, or I don't. So it's a more difficult sell because you're asking people to make more of an investment in themselves.
Sure.
When you use insurance, you're paying your copay, or you're paying whatever the insurance company has set for their fees.
Right.
When you go to self-pay or you're doing a spiritual coaching, that's not something the insurance companies cover. So that's a bigger investment.
But it's a bigger buy-in on the person who's working with you for a more positive result.
Correct. So with me personally, I have this dual treatment, right? This dual training. So I have the licensed marriage and family therapy therapist and that mental health piece and the substance abuse piece. And now I've married that with spiritual coaching, which adds a whole nother wave to treatment.
Great. It sounds like a good combination to really help a lot more or broader audience.
I think that the notion of adding spirituality is something that particularly the health insurance companies are asking us to do. Research has really showed that if you tap into your spirituality and what your sense of spirituality is, that you actually have a better chance at making improvements in the quality of your life. So even the insurance companies have asked us to at least ask about people's spirituality, which might include religion, and what your religious basis is, or not. It might just include, just a sense of, do you meditate every day? Do you practice yoga? That sort of thing. It doesn't have to include religion, but for some people it obviously does.
Oh, that's fantastic. I really like that. It sounds like you're helping folks on so many different levels.
I love adding this piece because it also helps people to tap into their own intuition, which means that you're teaching people to help themselves because they come to therapists for answers. You come to, and we try to encourage people to come up with those answers for themselves, right? And when you're a spiritual coach, you also help them to tap into their own intuition so that they can figure out what the answers are for themselves. And that really empowers people because I don't want to give you a fish, I want to teach you how to fish.
I love that. And let's talk a little bit about you being an author. How did this start?
Oh, that's a way bigger question, right? Because it's something it's something that if you're an author that you always know is inside of you, and you always say, like, I have a book inside me.
All right, let me rephrase the question. How did you let this out?
the beast. So when I started to tap into more of the spiritual piece, I was seeking out my own spiritual mentors, and I was saying to myself, like, to them, I know I have a book inside me, and other people who are in the field who have written their own books, they start to mentor you. Like they always. I remember the biggest advice I got at the time was, don't start with a memoir because nobody cares about your story unless you're somebody who can teach them something with your story. So writing a straight memoir, like, who cares? Unless you're famous or unless you have like a big message and you start off with that, nobody wants to hear that. So I'm thinking, what am I going to write my story about? And I remember how it kind of all, comes together. So when I said before about tapping into your intuition, right? So your own inner voice, your own inner knowing, I had to do that for myself. I started to notice over the years that I was doing therapy that there were certain patterns that people were talking about that I noticed and I call these patterns the rules, right? Things that you want to stay clear of. And in my head, I would call them the foul ball, right? And so I started to notice patterns of foul balls, and this has been happening over the whole time that I've been practicing. And then when I started working with these book mentors and saying, what is my book going to be about? My first book. I remember sitting and I was like, I'm in a counseling session and I have somebody else doing one of these patterns, and I was like, and it hit me like a brick, and that's your intuition where you're like, why don't you write these down? Like, have you ever actually put these patterns on paper? And I was like, well, you know what, that's a really good idea. And when you get that notion, you follow through with it, right? That's called following your intuition. So I sat down and I started to write them out. And by the time I was done, I had 14 of them. I think I started off with maybe 12. And then as I kept processing it, I'm like, oh, there's another one in there, and there's another one in there. And then as I wrote them down, now I could match them with stories of the clients that I was sitting with, right? Like, oh, that's rule number 2. Yep, that's another example of that. So the rules started to take on a life of their own. Now I'm talking to one of my mentors, and I'm like, I think I got something here. So I started to go over my rules, and I remember her being really quiet as I was reading them. Now she's from Texas, so she has a little bit of a Texas twang. So she didn't say anything for a minute, and I'm like, does she like them, or she's not saying anything? And then she said, wow, I do some of these at my house. And I was like, that's it. There it is right there, right? When that's what you want as an author, for what you're saying to have an impact on somebody, where somebody goes, I can relate to that. Like,
Sure.
I can learn something from that. So I knew at that moment, and we're going back about a year and a half ago, I knew at that moment that that was something that was a hit, and that's where I was going to go with it.
And what's the title?
The title is called Cut the Shit, Reframe Your Thinking and Regain Your Life. It had gone back and forth to a couple of titles, but I ended up hiring a book project manager that continued to help my chapter in the book develop, because she really liked the idea too. And Cut the Shit is really about catching yourself. Like, you are responsible for catching your own stuff and for changing it. Nobody else is responsible for that. And my style is very much like, take responsibility, cut through everything and do what you have to do to heal yourself. So that's why I called it Cut the Shit.
And I can understand that. I think a lot of people would prefer, now from the non-therapist side, the retiree guy that looks at life a little differently now, I think a lot of people would rather blame someone else than to take ownership of what they should do.
Honestly, that's what all of the rules are about, is they're ways that other people are trying to put their stuff onto other people. My life would be awesome if you just did this, or if you just stopped doing this. And that's honestly what a lot of the rules are about.
So we'll put links on the video and stories to get the book. I know it's, depending upon when you're watching this, it's either in pre-order or order. It'll be on Amazon. I'm sure it'll be one of their top books. Is there an audio book as well going to come out eventually?
That is the plan. So the first is going to come out on an ebook and a soft cover, and then I'm thinking my brother might read it and
nice.
do a Darth Vader voice or something.
Oh, good, sure, yeah. Each one person for each role, so that you can hear them in the back of your head.
They all might be Star Wars characters, because that's how I roll, right? I am a Jedi by nature.
Oh, all right, sure. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate. What's next?
Oh, well, I already have a second book kind of cooking in my head. And after I wrote the first one, if you ever said when you write your second one, I would look at you and go, like, you're nuts. Like, this took me a year and a half. But I've been told the second one is easier because you already know what you're supposed to do.
You have the project plan, who to work with, what to avoid.
Right. And the basic outline, right? What to do and what works and what doesn't. Ed and I have a 4-acre farm in Cumberland. It used to be an apple orchard. It's a historic property, so the property is 300 years old. It's in the historic district of Cumberland. It is 4 acres. It's like a little gentleman's farm, and we would love to turn it into a healing center. So I really envision being able to grow our current business and have people come for spiritual classes and retreats and that sort of thing. We would love to have people come and heal and tap into their own intuition, do all the stuff. I would love to have people come.
That would be amazing. There's not a lot of that out there.
There is if you go west.
Right.
Not here. If you go closer to Sedona, California, it's becoming bigger. But certainly a thing in Rhode Island, that's for sure. I don't know if the Quakers envisioned that when they set us up. But.
Yeah, well, if you've got horses out there, the horses are a great healing art as well. And apples and the orchard and just the age of the area.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Right. I envision like a full-size labyrinth on the property, because the labyrinths are a very spiritual, personal healing experience. So I would love to have that and to start off there. Maybe have like a salt cave, or that we have sound bowls, so a sound healing room, that sort of thing, like a whole wellness center. It would take a lot of resources, so I would love to. If anybody has any resources, to be able to
It's
build
okay
up
to
our
appeal to the
property.
audience. It's fine.
So the property's 300 years old. We have to keep. We just put on a new roof. Like it, she needs some TLC.
Okay. We like to finish up a lot of our personal interviews with a tribute to James Lipton and the types of questions that he used to ask celebrities.
Uh-oh.
So this is a little inside of you.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay.
What is your favorite word?
Inspire.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Ooh, horses' hooves on pavement.
I'll buy that. If you could have 0% chance of failure, what would you try to do?
Build a healing center on my 300-year-old property.
Okay. What job would you least like to do?
Probably childcare. I am not. Julie, I have to wait. You have to cut that. I'm thinking about that for a second. How would I? What job is not going to make me look like a jerk? Insurance sales.
Okay.
I know. So, that's probably anything that's door to door, where you really have to. I was gonna say sell a product, but isn't that what I'm doing? Right. I guess.
That you're offering a service, helping
This-
people's future.
Yeah.
Which people would say is an insurance salesman as well.
For sure. Marketing the invisible, right?
Want to go to the next question?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
This is an easier one. It's the last question. If you could go back and talk to your 12-year-old self for a piece of advice, what would you say?
Ooh. What you're being told about yourself right now is not true. You are powerful, you are strong, you are safe, and you are loved.
Can't say it any better than that. Thank you so much for coming on the Spotlight series. We wish you a lot of luck. We'll put some links for the book, and we'll get those books sold.
Yay! That's
Very
awesome.
much.
Thank you.